Hi, I'm Keith Story, and this is a presentation on how to do research and get published. This is a presentation that Linda Hames and I developed for our colleagues at Touro University. And Linda said she was too busy to redo it for putting up on YouTube, so I'm just going to do this by myself, but I wanted to give credit to Linda for her contribution to this. So I've done some research and publishing myself. I've published 21 books, 17 book chapters, 90 professional journal articles, 15 book reviews, and I've served on the editorial board of 8 professional journals. So I have had some background and success in this area. Anyway, let's get into the presentation. So, starts with an idea. Do you already have a line of research? What are your areas of professional interest? What issues do you or your students or clients face in their work? So you want to do applied research in real world settings. Uh, what do you see in your consultation or clinical practice, whatever you might be doing? Are you working in schools, classrooms, other applied settings? And then what topics are hot or controversial in your field? And what are your opinions on those topics? So any of those things can lead you to ideas about what would be good to do research on. And you can get more information by attending conferences and presentations on any topics of interest that you want to do research on. And it can be helpful to talk with researchers at the conference to pick their brains about research writing and what they're doing and suggestions that they might have. And then, of course, it's important to read articles on the topic that you're interested in. So you can see what's been done already. And it's really important to see what measurement systems are available to see how they're measuring success. And then you can adapt previous research for what you're wanting to do. And then at the end of the discussion section of research articles, they will have suggestions for future research. And this is a good place to look and see, and you might be able to get some ideas for research that would be relevant to you and your setting. Okay, so you want to lay out the components ahead of time for your research study. So you want to lay out your research question, who the participants are going to be, what the setting's going to be, what are your independent and dependent variables, and what's your measurement evaluation procedure, and what's your research design. So you're just laying out ahead of time all these components of a research study, and you can read about different areas and tweak what you've got and so on. But you just want to lay all this out ahead of time before you dive into actual research study. And then you want to read the research thoroughly on the topic before starting. So you want to see what's been done and how you can use the measurement systems, interventions, etc. that have already been used or adapt them to your purposes. And then it can be helpful to get input from knowledgeable people early in the process. So colleagues, other professionals, researchers in the area, so pick their brains. And you want to start the IRB process as early as possible because this can sometimes take a while. And you just want to get that going. And then a really critical thing is you always want to pilot test everything that you're going to do. The intervention, all data collection methods, all data analysis procedures, and so on. And it can be helpful to involve one or two participants who will not be in the actual study, but they might be similar to the participants that are going to be in your study. And they must go through the IRB and consent process. So it's important that anybody that you're doing a study with, even if it's a pilot study, is that they give consent and the IRB has approved what you're going to do. But anyway, I really highly recommend that you pilot test everything that you're going to do. This will save a lot of headaches and it'll allow you to tweak what you're going to do and get rid of any possible flaws in your study. Then once a study's going, you can start writing up the introduction and method sections. So you don't have to wait till the study is over before you start writing. And then you want to think about the writing process as chunking or a task analysis. So you can just write one subsection at a time, such as description of the participants, that's a paragraph or two, rather than trying to sit down and write the whole method section, the whole introduction section. In the introduction, you can just write the topic sentence, this study's about such and such, and just gets you started and makes it doable. And then if you're using a single case research design, I recommend that you start with your ringer so you get good results right away. That's always helpful. And then you can always contact journal editors and express willingness to serve as a guest reviewer for them. And this will help you see how the review process works. And if you are asked to be a guest reviewer, you don't have to write a really lengthy review, but you want to make sure that your review is focused and following the guidelines that the journal has for publication. So and you don't want to be overly critical of somebody. So you can always make suggestions on how they could improve the article or research that they've done. And you can also offer to do book reviews for journals. This is an easy way to build your vita and also to get some practice writing and build up goodwill with the editor. And then if you're a professor and you have a good student who you think is able to complete a research study, you can work with them and be upfront that they would be the first author on a study from their thesis or dissertation. And it's always good to encourage students to do research as well. Okay, and then as I mentioned before, you want to start writing as soon as the study started and keep notes for your discussion section while you're implementing the study. So things might come to you about future research or how things could be done differently and so on. And then it's also possible to write 2 for 1. So you can write up a study on the research that you did and submit to a journal, but you can also write a how-to article for teachers, practitioners, or others. And this can go in a newsletter, online site, or wherever. But this can be really helpful for practitioners in the field to get, here's 5 ways to handle this situation or whatever the case might be. So you can, branch out and get more publications from one study. And then you can also write a review or discussion article and get that published as well. So if you got an area of interest, you can see what's been published before and have there been other review articles done on this topic. And if there have been, is there an updated review that's needed? So if the review is 10, 15 years old, and there's been some research on that topic since then, you can do an updated review. So it doesn't mean that you're doing original review of a research area that's never been fully reviewed. So it could be, but it could also be an updated review. And then is it applied, what you're talking about? Is it not applied? Does the community need clarification on something like a definition or research methods or whatever? That can be a helpful discussion article. Do you have opinion or experience with the topic? You could, weave that in. And if you are interested in writing a review, you can run it by an editor of a journal. You can talk to colleagues about it. And if you're a grad student and you've written a paper for a class, you can always submit it to a journal for publication. So you could, submit it yourself. You could work with the instructor of the class or professor or so on. But that's just a good way to start getting involvement in the writing and publication process. Once you're actually writing, if you have co-authors, I really, really recommend that you talk about authorship order ahead of time before you start writing. Because if you wait till the end, people are going to have different opinions on who should be first author, which of course is the most important ordership for people. And so you could have hurt feelings, you could have professional jealousy, you could make enemies. So discuss this ahead of time and come to an agreement. And if you're the lead author, then you take on more responsibility. So you're going to chunk sections, determine who will write different sections, and make sure they're doing their writing and so on. And then as lead author, you'd be responsible for merging the sections together and doing the initial editing and getting the article finished. And then you can go into more editing process at that point in time. And then to write, you have to actually spend time writing. So it's good to set aside time so you can put it on your schedule, figure out what works best for you, short writing periods, daily, weekly, long stretches. It just depends upon what is good for you. I know B.F. Skinner got up every day at 5 in the morning and wrote for an hour before he had breakfast and got on with his day. Another colleague I know, Eric Carter, who's been very prolific, he said he goes into his office every day during the week at 7 o'clock and writes from 7 to 9. Doesn't do email, phone calls, meetings, anything. He just has that time blocked out for writing. So see what works for you, and you can do a combination of those things or whatever. And then having an organizational system is important for your writing. So you want to make sure you've got your references, you have a list going as you write, and then you want to track articles by topic. So you can use index cards or Skinner's Thinking Aid, which I'll show you on the next slide. It can be helpful to have outlines for each section or chapter, and then once you start writing, you can see, oh, this is missing, or I need to have more information on this topic or whatever. And again, it's important to chunk things out and work on one section or area at a time rather than sitting down and trying to write a whole chapter or a whole textbook or whatever you're working on. And here's Skinner's system that he used, and there are now electronic systems that you can use with this, and I've got a reference for this at the end so you can read the actual article, which may make it easier to understand. Okay, so when you're writing, you want to set up stimulus control procedures for writing. Same time, same place, whatever. And it's important to minimize distractions. So email, phone calls, people, games on your computer, music, whatever. You just want to minimize those as much as possible so you can focus on your writing. And then sometimes it may be beneficial to have a hard copy of a section that you're working on, a couple pages or whatever, method section. So if you're waiting for a meeting to start, or even during the meeting, you can just pull it out and start editing the hard copy. I found that to be very helpful in my writing. Even if you get just 5 minutes in, that can add up over time. And you want to reinforce progress, so self-reinforcement, reinforcement from others. You can do self-recruited feedback where you show others what you're doing and get praise or whatever from them. And some books and articles on how to write. I've got the references here at the end of the presentation, but there are a lot of helpful books and articles out there on the writing process. Editing. So editing and writing are two different skill sets. I've worked with some people who are good writers and poor editors, and other people who are poor writers and good editors. So it just depends, and some people are good at both writing and editing. So you need to do self-editing, and you want to see how many drafts you need to go through. It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20. I did one review article on social validation procedures, and it went through probably at least 24 complete drafts before we finally got it done and got it published. So you need to think about what's a final draft. And when you think you've got a final draft done, it's all set, what I would recommend is you set it aside for a day or two or a week or whatever, and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes, because you may catch things that you didn't catch before, and you really want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to get spelling errors or punctuation errors or whatever the case might be. And then again, you want to have some time between the final draft and sending it out to a reviewer editor. And then you want to think about editing electronically or from a hard copy. So I found it helpful to initially write electronically and then at some point have a hard copy and use my red pen, and just it was reinforcing to see all the red pen marks on the hard copy. And it can be really helpful to send a draft to colleagues for feedback and or editing, and they can give you good feedback on how well you're writing. and then edit for others as well. So, um, it's good to be helpful. And if you are asked to edit, you want to be tough. So don't be nice. This is very important. It's not that you want to be overly critical, but you want to give feedback to the person on what's good as well as what could be improved or what's not so good. And be open to the feedback. So again, they're doing this for your benefit. They're not trying to be mean or punish you. So it can be a tough process, but you want to take the feedback in a positive manner. And then you want to make the revisions and clarifications, or don't make if you think they're not right. And then if you're saving each copy over time, you want to do a new number or title change or whatever, so you don't just overwrite what you did before. And you can keep track of what's the latest copy. And this can be important, especially if you have multiple authors and you're sharing electronically with each other. It can get confusing as to which is the most up-to-date copy and who's doing what. Carl Post and I have written quite a few things together, and when we would send something, it would be K to M on such a date, version 1, and then she would respond M to K, such a date, revision 2, and so on. So that way we're able to keep track of it and not get too confused as to what's going on. And again, let some time pass once you think you've got your manuscript completed, and then take a new look at it. Where to submit your article. So you can read professional journals in the field, and you should be doing that anyway. And then you can create a list of possible journals. You have similar perspectives, similar work, and so on. And then make sure you meet the manuscript preparation guidelines. What reference style the journal's using, how they want graphs and figures, tables, and so on. So this is really important because you don't want to annoy the editor, and just those are red flags. If you're not being careful to follow the guidelines, then they're going to be maybe more critical or less positive about what you've submitted. And don't be afraid of rejection. It's a learning process. It's okay to get rejected by a journal. I've had lots of articles, probably most of them, who've gotten rejected at some point. It may be, revise and resubmit, or it may be an outright rejection, but you can submit it to another journal after that rejection. You don't want to submit to multiple journals at the same time. That's not ethical. But, if you do get rejected, it's just a learning process, and revise and resubmit. I've worked with some co-authors and doctoral students who got to the point of submitting their dissertation or article for publication, and they said, I can't submit it, it might be rejected. And they never ended up submitting it, which in my viewpoint was kind of foolish. But, you're going to be rejected at some point, so you just got to deal with it and get over it. Okay, and once you submit it, so what happens is it goes to the editor, and then the editor or associate editor will send it out to 3 to 5 reviewers with expertise in the area, and each of those reviewers will submit to the editor or associate editor their recommendations and comments on what you've submitted, and then the editor will make a decision. Could be accept, could be revise and resubmit, it could be reject. And if it is rejected or it's revise and resubmit, I suggest that you make a table of all the reviewers' comments and how you're going to respond to them or not respond to them. So here's an example of how I've done it. So here's the editorial recommendations and the response. So add in information on research on self-management strategies introduction. Added in information on these specific studies. So there are the references. Add in IQ scores for participants. Did not add in IQ scores, as we do not believe that this is relevant information. Did add in more information on academic test scores. and add in more detail on inter-observer reliability agreements, added in more information on observer training and on calculations of reliability agreements. So this is really helpful in making the revisions and also sharing with the editor. So it shows that you're serious about the review process and that you took every comment seriously and how you responded to it in the revision of your article. This can be really helpful in showing the editor that you took things seriously and made the revisions. Okay, so we've been talking about articles, but also a lot of it applies to books as well. So books start with an idea, same way as research and discussion articles. And you want to see where there are gaps in the field as far as books go for practice or teaching or research. And then you need to do research on book publishers in this area. So who publishes respected authors in your field? Do they have a line of books on similar topics? Distribution? Are they at conferences? If they are, you can go up and talk to them in person. You can talk to colleagues about their experience with the publisher. Some publishers are better to work with than others. And publishers will have guidelines for submission of proposals, and you want to follow these very carefully and in detail. So they may want multiple chapters along with their prospectus, and they may list what they want in their prospectus. So just make sure you're getting in everything that they want. Otherwise, they're going to be less impressed with what you're proposing. If multiple authors are involved in the book, you want to work out who's going to be the lead author ahead of time. And then it can be helpful for setting up a format for all the chapters, especially if you've got multiple people writing chapters. Rather than just saying, hey, can you write a chapter on such and such topic? Say, hey, can you write a chapter on such and such topic, and here's the guidelines that I want you to follow. So Dawn Hunter and I did an edited book on transition and employment services for people with disabilities, and so we set up the guidelines of what we wanted. Here are the key points. Here's 2 case studies. Here's your writing in chapters. Here's references, recommendations, and so on. So that a lot of the authors said this was really helpful for their writing the chapters. You want to use self-management strategies with yourself and encourage others to use them, and use reinforcement with others. So people may say they're going to commit and write the chapter, but you have to make sure they're actually doing it. So you want to do a tracking table for edited books. And here's a tracking table that Dawn Hunter and I developed. So it's got the chapter, topic, and authors. I took out the authors, who's going to edit the chapter, requested due date, first prompt, second prompt, and date to author. So you have to prompt people. They may not get things in on time. And again, it's just want to make clear, who's doing what as far as the editing process goes. Here's some references. Gilbert's 2 books are really excellent. I recommend them highly. Skinner's 2 articles on how to write. Strunk, Elements of Style, really important book to read. It goes into detail on logistics like punctuation and sentence structure and so on. Very helpful book. And Zinsser's book on writing well. So I hope this has been helpful, and good luck in your research and good luck in your writing, and thanks.